one of the greatest disasters in history seemed in the making. An entire British army faced annihilation. But out of the fog and the mist shrouding the channel came a strange armada of Navy craft, fishing boats, pleasure yachts, anything that would float. The seagoing people of Britain had come to rescue their army. High overhead, British fighter planes fought the Luftwaffe to a standstill. While below, small Allied suicide units held the Germans back long enough for the miracle of Dunkirk to take place. $211,500 British troops, plus 112,500 French and Belgian were rescued. Over 300,000 battle-tested men, grimly determined to go back again with new tools, new weapons with which to blast the hated Nazis out of this world. For free men are like rubber balls. The harder they fall, the higher they bounce. Leading the British by this time was a man who had been bouncing all his life, Winston Churchill, who had tried for years to warn the world about Germany. Meantime, the situation that faced France was as nearly hopeless as a military situation can be. 2/5 of the French army was lost. There were fewer than 50 divisions left to defend a front almost 200 miles long, running from the northern end of the Maginot Line to the sea. And behind that thin front line, there were no reserves. The despairing people of Paris sent their children south, praying that some miracle would keep them from harm. The hopeless men of the French army, without adequate arms or equipment, braced themselves for the coming blow.
The first blow fell on June 5th. The French resistance was determined, but by June 8th, the left flank army had been shattered and a general withdrawal was ordered to the line of the Marne and the Seine. On June 9th, the German main attack came. Within 2 days, the German armored and motorized divisions roared out into the open terrain. With this breakthrough, the issue of the Battle of France was decided, and from that time on, there was official talk of an armistice. Now, what about the famous Maginot Line? Let's go back and take a look. On June 14th, the Germans launched 2 attacks against the Maginot Line. In both cases, penetrations were effected. But we must remember that this was against fortifications defended by men devoid of hope.
In the meantime, Mussolini, now thinking it's safe, sent his divisions racing across the border.
The hand that held the dagger has struck it into the back of its neighbor.
Organized resistance in France was no longer possible. The government faced 2 alternatives: retire to North Africa and carry on from there, or give up the struggle. France's leaders were old and tired, and the oldest and most tired was Marshal Pétain. Egged on by men like Laval, who saw in a German victory his chance for personal power, on June 16th, Pétain asked for an armistice. The news is carried to Hitler, who received this word of a great nation's fall in a characteristic manner. Also characteristic were his terms for the armistice. It must be signed in the coach where Marshal Foch met the defeated Germans in the last war. The French delegation arrives to pay the final price of French disunity. and the treachery of some of its leaders. The final price, a price that for centuries to come, the French won't forget. More than 3/5 of their country was to be blacked out by a military occupation. The remainder was to be controlled by a French government acceptable to Hitler. A tax of 400 million francs a day was to be imposed on the French people to support the German army of occupation. Nearly 2 million French prisoners of war were to be taken into Germany and kept there as hostages, to work as slaves or rot of hunger, tuberculosis, or other diseases in concentration camps. Men deliberately and permanently separated from their families in order to decrease the French birth rate and thus eliminate France as a world power in future generations. French civilians, men, women, and children, must slave on farm or in factory for the Nazi master race or starve. There will be a class of subject alien races. We need not hesitate to call them slaves. French children were to grow up on such inadequate food that many would reach the age of 12 before they grew new teeth. And for any attempts to protest against these restrictions, thousands of innocent French civilians would be executed. This was the price the French were to pay as they signed the armistice. And the master of the master race must go to Paris to tour the streets of what was once the City of Light. You notice no cheering crowds here to welcome in the new order. When the people of Paris come to the streets again, it is to hear the voice of dictators, telling them what they must do, how they must live, what they must say, what they must think, telling them how to be slaves. Gone is the Republic of France. Gone is free speech and a free representative government. Gone is liberty, equality, fraternity. These are the French. With their ears they listen, but their minds and their hearts, these are down on the Mediterranean where the battle colors of the regiments are being taken to Africa, out of the Nazi grasp. The people weep as their glory departs, for they don't as yet know that France has hope, a rallying point. Charles de Gaulle, a soldier in the great tradition of Foch, is not surrendering. He will continue to fight, gathering about him loyal Frenchmen from all over the world to become the Free French Army, the fighting French. Yes, the people weep as they watch their colors go, not knowing that 2 years later, those same flags would again be unfurled in North Africa, alongside the Stars and Stripes, alongside the Union Jack. Once more, their leaders, General de Gaulle and the famous General Giraud, stand united in the common cause with the leaders of their allies. Once more, the red, white, and blue of France is raised on high. For out of the ashes of the defeat and the humiliation of France, her soul has been born again.